Harriet Harman was one of the leading figures in Labour during the 2000s. She was also an MP for more than 40 years. She stood down from her South London seat at the last general election. The first ever Minister for Women under Tony Blair and responsible for welfare reform after 1997, Harman was even briefly the leader of the opposition. That came after Ed Miliband lost the 2015 general election, and she was, of course, replaced by Jeremy Corbyn when he was elected to the job that autumn. Today, Harriet Harman is a Labour peer and party grandee, so naturally, she has a podcast. It's called Electoral Dysfunction, which she co-hosts alongside Ruth Davidson and the political editor at Sky News, Beth Rigby. And last week, Harman had this to say on the podcast about the future of the Labour Party leadership.
The only way we'll have a woman leader of the Labour Party next time is if we start a conversation now where we say that actually that men cannot stand for the leadership next time, because if men stand for the leadership next time, we'll have another.
Are you going to have an all-women's list for the next Labour leader? You can't do that.
I think what we need to do is for women's ambition to be encouraged and male ambition to be the next leader of the Labour Party to be discouraged.
Do you think the next leader after Andy Burnham, whoever that may be, has to be a woman then?
Oh, I absolutely think so. And I think I'm going to be asking any really excellent young man MP, rising star in the Labour Party. I'll be wanting to encourage and support them, but I'll be saying to them, are you going to support a woman next time? Or are you going to put yourself in front and put a woman behind you?
I've had enough of this stuff, Michael. Now, to be clear, in 2010, Diane Abbott stood for the leadership of the Labour Party. She's a woman. Harriet Harman didn't back her. In 2020, Rebecca Long-Bailey stood for the leadership of the Labour Party. Guess what? Harriet Harman did back her. So I think there's a little bit more going on than just the gender of the candidates. Now, whatever your views on that proposal, what you might not know is that it's illegal. And that's because of the Equality Act passed in the final days of the Gordon Brown government in 2010. It's the UK's main anti-discrimination law, effectively consolidating a patchwork of earlier legislation like the Sex Discrimination Act and Race Relations Act into a single statute. In short, the law is designed to protect people from discrimination, harassment and victimisation based on 9 protected characteristics, including age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage or civil partnership, pregnancy, maternity, race, religion or belief, sex and sexual orientation. It applies across employment, education, housing and the provision of goods and services and covers several forms of discrimination. All of that sounds welcome, right? But here's where it gets really interesting, at least in the context of Harriet Harman's comments. Because while the relevant carve-out in the Act, Section 104, allows registered political parties to make arrangements, including single-sex shortlists for selecting candidates, the scope for that is explicit. It only applies to selection of candidates for elections to Parliament, local government, the Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Assembly. The legislation text confirms this is tied specifically to a relevant election where the purpose is reducing inequality between the number of a party's elected candidates who share a protected characteristic and those who don't. So all women shortlists for the Labour Party. Seems reasonable, but a leadership election doesn't fit that definition. That's because it's an internal party process for choosing who leads an organisation, not a mechanism for selecting who stands for public office. Leader and deputy leader elections aren't listed amongst the relevant elections that the exemption covers. So the specific legal shield that makes all women shortlists lawful doesn't automatically extend to who can run the Labour Party. And without Section 104 covering it, a leadership election barring men would likely be judged to be discriminatory under the law. It would be illegal. After all, political parties are treated as membership associations under the Act, and excluding members from a benefit or opportunity on the basis of their sex would be discriminatory. Certainly interesting. And more interesting still is that the person who introduced the 2010 Equality Act was, you guessed it, Harriet Harman. She's proposing something which is illegal under the legislation she introduced. Michael, is it possible that Harriet Harman doesn't actually know the law that not only she introduced, but she often says is the greatest achievement in her political career.
I mean, is she proposing it has to be all men, or isn't she just saying she's going to discourage men from standing? Which is presumably a different, if she's saying I'm going to try and make it a bit taboo to stand as a man to be the next leader of the Labour Party because I want the women to step forward. I don't think that would be illegal. It'd be illegal to sort of have in the rule book only, well, it might be, I mean, I don't know the law, quite frankly.
I just said it to you, Michael. I spent a good couple of minutes telling you the law.
Yeah. Well,
all women shortlists for the Labour Party or the Tory Party or wherever, legal.
But what I mean
doing
is,
it for the leadership, illegal.
But at the same time, carve-outs get made for different things, don't they? So isn't it always the case that you can't discriminate unless it's for a reasonable cause? So you can't discriminate unless there's a good reason for doing it, which is why you can have like women-only associations, whatever, right? So and there is a women's equality party. I think you have to be a woman to join it. So clearly you can be a political party that excludes men, and their leader can presumably only be a woman.
I suspect that isn't actually lawful, Michael. No. I suspect they strongly discourage it.
Yeah. But I mean, she's talking about strongly discouraging it anyways, isn't she? She's saying, I will talk to male members of the Labour Party and say, maybe this time don't put yourself forward. I mean, I don't think that's I don't think that's particularly strong politics. I think it's a bit naff. But I'm not sure it's illegal.
What do you think of the politics of it? Because, to be clear, it is illegal to have an all-male or all-female shortlist, exclusively shortlist, or any kind of protected characteristic under the law. It is illegal, and you're saying that she's not saying that. I've heard many times, by the way, people say these things in the Labour Party. The extent of the Equality Act is quite extraordinary. If we are hiring somebody here at Novara Media, and on Slack, I say, we should just hire a woman, that breaches the Equality Act during the hiring process. It's a very serious thing. And I find it really interesting, Michael, that employers around the country have to know this stuff inside out. Otherwise, they're going to get rinsed. By the way, as they should do. You shouldn't be able to discriminate against people on the basis of a special characteristic. I agree with that. But I sincerely think that people at Harriet Harman don't think that those rules should A, apply to them, or B, they don't necessarily know them inside out. And C, I don't think they understand the extent to which they curtail the decisions made by organisations every single day across the country. I really don't think they understand it. I think, at one point she wanted more women in Parliament, and so good. Like I say, I support all women shortlists. And so we had this legislation, and now, because she wants a female leader of the Labour Party, she's kind of saying the opposite thing. She's at least going against the spirit of the laws she's advocated, if not, the letter. I think it's probably both, actually. I find it really strange. And I think it says, again, so much about sort of DEI liberalism. I know you're not much as animating Michael today. Maybe he's on sort of beta blockers like that Lux Max. What's his name?
I think Harry, I struggle.
Are you Lux Maxing, Michael?
No, I'm quite sweaty and need to get back into the gym myself. But so I'm thinking about this. Yeah, I mean, the politics is a bit naff, but it is also kind of crazy that the Labour Party still hasn't had a female leader.
Because people like her kept voting against it.
Yeah, there's something to that.
I was a Labour member in 2020. I voted for Rebecca Long-Bailey. Who did you vote for?
I voted for Rebecca Long-Bailey, yeah.
There you go.
So I have voted for a female leader of the Labour Party.
There you go. And somebody like Harriet Harman will say, by the way, it's legit to say, why are two men talking about this? But I voted for a female leader of the Labour Party. You didn't. I'm tired of this. Basically what she's saying is, I want somebody I like to be leader of the Labour Party. I want a woman. Okay, can they be Rebecca Long-Bailey? No. Can they be Zara Sultana? Absolutely not. So what you have is this masquerade where people are talking about equality and, liberation and politics, but it's actually about, no, I want to get my way. Look at the talent pool of women on the Labour right. Okay?
They should have gone with Emily Thornberry in 2020.
Who would you say as a viable leader of the Labour Party from the Labour right? Who would you say? Tell me. Again, maybe I'm being a misogynist. Who? Tell me. I can name a ton of women in the Labour Party who should be the leader or could be the leader. Emily Thornberry. I mean, I wouldn't put her on the Labour right to start with.
No, but I mean, they should have gone with her in 2020. Same politics as Keir Starmer, but actually with some charisma. But she didn't go anywhere, which was a shame. Well, I mean, I didn't back her at the time. But in retrospect, was a shame. It would have been better if she got the job than Keir Starmer.
I can see the TikToks now. G&Ts with Emily.
Exactly.
The evening TikTok at 6 p.m. But look, it's even strange that they're saying this about Andy Burnham when the person who's basically driving his whole agenda is Louise Haigh, right?
And Annalise Midgley.
And Annalise Midgley is his chief whip. So given the Chancellor isn't actually that powerful, John Healey is basically just doing what he's told, right? John Heaton. Who's John Heaton? John Heaton is a factotum. He's doing what he's told by...
We don't know that yet, but it's a strong hypothesis.
John Healy is not a political heavyweight to be Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's being told what to think, in my view, by Jim O'Neill and by Andy Haldane and by Andy Burnham, okay? That's why he got the job. So one could argue that the two most powerful people in government after Andy Burnham are Louise Haigh and Annalise Midgley. They're the real power brokers. But that counts for nothing, right? That counts for nothing. And Andy Burnham is a brochurist because, Harriet Harman didn't get her way. And we saw the exact same thing. There's this really peculiar part of Labour right politics that's attached to this stuff. Andy Burnham became the PM, and the Labour Women's Network and Jess Phillips immediately start saying 50% of the cabinet have to be women. That's quite sensible, actually. Fine. 50% of the cabinet have to be women. I think 50% of the great officers of state have to be women. So it has to be 2 women, 2 men. And I think, well, what if I want 3 women? Is that discriminating against men? Which is quite plausible, of course. What are your thoughts on this, guys? Let's get something in the comments. Because often, I talk about this with female comrades all the time, women comrades all the time, and they say harsher things than I do. But maybe I'm out of touch.
So in the Equality Act, right, Section 158 permits positive action generally where a group faces disadvantage or disproportionately low participation, provided it's proportionate. So if...
Michael, we just literally went through all of this.
But if you could argue that it was proportionate because there had been
but a political party is a private association. We've gone through all of this. I literally just spoke for about 3 minutes explaining all of this.
Well, we'll get fine. I'll take your version of it.
By the way, I think the Equality Act, a lot of it's crazy, a lot of it's good. And what's really ironic is that right-wingers keep using the Equality Act to get their way. So, for instance, a teacher might be sacked for saying something which is in keeping with his Christian faith. He might be a real hardcore, zealot, and I mean that in the religious sense. And he'll get sacked. And the exact same people who, I hate the Farage of the world, I hate the Equality Act, they'll defend this chap, and he'll get a big payout because of the Equality Act.
There's nothing wrong with saying you're against something but then using it.
No, but my point is, I don't think it's particularly well formulated legislation, but I think it's better than not having it. Put it that way.
I think some of the rulings about equal work for equal pay are a bit weird.
Agreed. I think ultimately pay should be done. Pay deals and pay disputes should be done through sectoral bargaining and trade unions. I think having judges decide this stuff is quite dangerous.
Having judges. So the weird one was Next, wasn't it? So they had that Next were paying their warehouse staff more than their front of house staff.
Yeah.
And the warehouse staff was slightly more male than the front of house staff, which was slightly more female. And a judge decided that these were equal jobs. And so therefore Next was doing wage discrimination between the sexes. But Next literally said, we've offered everyone front of house a job in the warehouse and they don't want to take it because it's somewhat unpleasant. And we have to pay more to the warehouse people because the market rates for warehouse workers is more than the market rates for shop people who work in shops. And they still sort of sued them loads of money. And it's one of the reasons why Birmingham went bankrupt. One of the reasons, not the only reason.
Well, Birmingham didn't actually go bankrupt, but that's a story for another day.